Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulihi al-kareem. Wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'een. Amma ba'd. Ramadan Mubarak. So, I'm pretty sure many of you already do this, but I just thought that if we speak to our children about the debasement of loose women and how it's not honorable to make that type of life choice, that we can help them to understand that pleasing Allah is paramount, and to actually talk about the feminist and occultist agenda. I feel like this makes a lot of sense to just openly and directly tell the children, like when they start, 7, 8, 9, their sense of self is starting to develop, to really actually tell them, these women who dress like that, this is not honorable, this is not a good path for you. And to consistently instill this in them. Now, I know some of us reverts find this idea kind of complicated. I'm sure born Muslims don't have to exactly struggle with the same thing. They get tempted away from what their parents taught them of, modesty and, fashion conservatism. But for us American reverts, we have to undo the conditioning that was pumped into us as a child. And one way in which we can do this as mothers is to talk about why modesty is a virtue. And it's okay to let these feminists scream at the top of their lungs and say, you shouldn't judge people by what they wear. No, we can and we will. When I dressed provocative, I knew exactly what I was doing. And if a better woman judged me for like it, I deserved it. Period. I have argued politely with some friends over this. And, they're in their ways and I am in my ways. But the difference between us is, I see how that type of immodesty creates this sort of ego, this sort of depravity. You're a flesh bag. You attract really creepy fellas. You become bound to your flesh in a way that isn't natural. You almost can't escape it. You can't stop thinking about it. And there's like two sides to this. There's the women who are chubby, who shouldn't dress provocative but do. And then those who have the body and then show it. We need to be in the middle, which is we wear modesty no matter our body sizes, no matter how perfect our bodies are, and to be satisfied with that type of lifestyle, and to not seek to follow the feminists down the path of hedonism, of hypersexualization, and that it's good to not tempt other women's husbands. It's good to not let dirty old men stare at us all day. It's good to not have lesbians and bisexuals also looking at us and getting stimulated. Rather, having less sexual energy in the room is better for productivity, peace of mind, and harmony. Now, because of how cartoons and even kid shows really are getting at belly shirts, they started this in the 90s especially. I had a tongue ring, I had other body piercings. I wore, clothes that I would never let my child wear, but I didn't have, the proper upbringing to be like, hey, you shouldn't do that. Once I hit puberty, it was off to the races. And my grandma was kind of really chronically depressed, would sleep all day. Sometimes she was mentally ill, and she just was not fit to raise a hormonal strong teenager. So she was not able to do that. And my grandfather was at work all day. I had free range. I didn't have a mom, didn't have a dad. And even when I lived with my mom being a former sex worker, modesty was not something she cared about. Now that she's gotten familiar with me being a Muslim, she's getting the idea of it. I've done great dawah with her mind, but I wouldn't let her necessarily speak some of her philosophy around my child. My mom has only been around my child once, when my child was years old, and I have kept my child around people who are of a different caliber. Let's just put it that way, as kindly as possible. So, for us American reverts, we have an uphill battle. But that's not to say that those who are born in the East don't have a battle, because they have a TV, they have social media, and their daughters, their sisters, their wives are all being tempted to disrobe. So they have their own battle and they can speak to their own problems. But here in America, if we raise our daughters and sons, especially, our sons, to look down upon that type of lifestyle, it can help so that they are less groomed, less allured, less preyed upon by those very women. And the way in which we can do this is talking to our sons and saying, you want a woman who is modest. You don't want a lady who shows her breasts to everyone, who has her coochie hanging out, who wears high heels and, she does this, she does that. She might get drunk and then sleep with your best friend. You don't want a girl like that. The feminists don't want you to be mean. They don't want you to have any accountability for their clothing, their behavior, what they put in their body, how many children they execute via abortion. They don't want anyone to give them a different perspective. And the universities who push this gender role, modesty, I've taken those classes, they push this stuff and then they warp it into this sophisticated, high class, glasses wearing, smug, liberal, scarf wearing persona. They academicize hedonism as art, as, this, it's posh, it's progressive, they look down upon women who cover as boring, plain Jane, not anything of value. Like, they really look down upon it. They say they don't, but if they didn't, they wouldn't promote the opposite, right? You know them by what they promote. And what's interesting is that because these women who love to debase themselves have gotten to be around kids more because of the internet, whereas previously, if there was a woman half naked prancing around your neighborhood, she had no direct influence over your children besides you seeing her, and then you'd bring the children inside and say, that lady's crazy, you don't want to dress like that trash, don't do that, you need to be dignified and carry yourself with a sense of grace, right? Instilling these values was easier then because you didn't have so much saturation. Today, though, you can clearly see that the occultists and the secular feminist atheists are hell-bent on getting to your children. Okay? They sang songs about it in the San Francisco choir. They want to get in. There's a reason why Joe Biden, the weakest president in the United States history has ever had, met with Cardi B. It wasn't just because of her fans trying to get him to vote Democrat. It was that all the young girls in America could see that this woman who drugged and robbed men and sold her body and can't speak with any type of grammar, who has no manners, and I would say even more, but someone like that is talking to a president. It was to show those girls, if you act like that, you will not be shunned and you will be accepted by society. Where in the past, you had to conform and you had to kind of carry yourself with something better. Honor was seen as something you wanted to preserve. Okay? Today, you see the inversion of that. So if we consistently talk to our daughters about, don't wear these short shorts. Don't wear a belly shirt. You don't need to act like that. You don't need to talk like that. I didn't raise you like that. Come on, you can do better. To have these positive ways of enforcing it. And I would say, let them have that sort of angled eye. There's nothing wrong with that. The feminists brainwash you into saying, you can't judge me. There's a moment where you can't judge someone. And then there's moments where, no, you have to practice discernment. And say what you're doing is wrong. And you got to shape up. It's different if someone's made a mistake and then they learn. But if there's a woman who habitually brags about, how many dudes she rammed through on the weekend, and she's always bringing her half-dressed body around her friends' husbands. This is some behavior where you're like, okay, there's a pattern here and we have to watch out. And so if you don't want your daughter to turn out like that, we have to educate them to know that lifestyle is beneath a dignified girl, and that a good man does not deserve a woman like that, and a woman like that does not deserve a good man until she changes. And even then, she's only qualified to the caliber that matches hers. And if you want your son not to bring home a woman like that and be controlled by her, be mentally abused by her, psychologically tortured by her, all that, and a spiritual drain, you have to talk to him. And sometimes these talks have to start from an early age, where you talk about, what is a good wife, son? What is a good husband, my daughter? What is the proper role of a husband or a wife? See, if we don't do this, especially as American reverts, we are not breaking the chain of dysfunction. Okay, my family never talked about marriage, never told me what a good husband was, just nothing at all. And so I had to look towards musicians, actresses. Horrible thing. There was in the 90s people just like Cardi B and Nicki Minaj, and I'm not gonna lie and say they didn't influence my behavior, because they did. And then these same people will turn around and say, well, your parents should have been there. Wait a minute. If it isn't good for kids, why should it be allowed in society? Because the kids are the future. So if something damages the children, it damages the future. So why are we letting these women get money and earn their way in society? Why are we putting them on a pedestal? Why is it that these worst examples of femininity, the worst examples of motherhood, the zero levels of honor, are promoted to our women, and the ones who, let's say, they actually do some type of scientific work? One woman has been a great mother to 12 sons. Another one has started a community garden. Another one built some, chicken coops for free for people. Why isn't it that the good women who preserve their morality and chastity, honor, and dignity ever get highlighted? And it's because the naughtiness, the satanic energy of these women are promoted, and they have a sort of pull. And this drags down the men because of their hormones, because of how they're built. And this only the really strong men can resist. And that resistance is built, I'd argue, by a mother openly showing disdain for those types of women. Saying, son, don't bring me home with those type of women. Do you want to break your mama's heart? A sister saying, brother, this lady may have the perfect body you like, but she's trashy, she's ghetto, she's loud, she's rude, she's narcissistic. We don't really think she's the best for you. Right? Now, this doesn't mean the man lets all the women decide who he marries, but rather offers him a counter perspective. Because if you want to protect your children from these liberal, feminist, secular atheists and these occultists, you have to talk to them, because they want to talk to your kids, as I've showed you throughout the week, about topics I don't even want to hear about in a school setting. And they are coming. And if you think you're safe in your country, you haven't been paying attention. Because the sanctions they have been doing upon Russia are the same thing they can do to your country for violating human rights. And look at everything they're swooping in under the umbrella term of human rights. Okay? They are getting in the positions of the schools. Okay? The right wing in America, the Christians especially, have collapsed and not really put a huge fight back. The liberals systematically, through a certain mafia, took down those people to the point where now it's very open. Fox News hired Caitlyn Jenner. Alex Jones is promoting Blair White. Michael Malice is promoting Blair White. Charlie Kirk's promoting Lady MAGA. You see what I'm saying? You can see how the agenda is full circle. Okay? And that little by little they get in. To the point where I can go to certain parts of California and see a rainbow flag on a church. I can see a lesbian priest in a Catholic cathedral when this is not allowed. Clearly not allowed by the Bible. So the more they can confuse your religion, the more they can confuse your kids, and the more you're away from your kids and at work and they're at school, the schools are raising your children, and the television and all that, turning your kid against you. So this is why you have to be active with them when they're younger, so that the conditioning is there overall, because they know that. And why do you think they're trying to target the kids in schools? Because they know if we come to your kid early while the parents aren't really paying attention, busy earning money, busy doing this, they get your kid without even you realizing it, before your kid has this sort of developed, front cortex where it's just like, hey, I don't want to do this. What you're saying is wrong, right? It's very important that we tell the boys, you don't want a loose girl on OnlyFans. You don't want a woman who's had 4 abortions. You don't want these types. And to consistently remind us, not going to one time. One of the strongest memories the kids will have is where you go on a nice hike, you sit down around the campfire, you have some hot chocolate with some nice halal marshmallows, and you talk to them and say, it's time to talk about something real. And you have that long discussion. Another time, you go on a walk, you sit by the ocean, you say, I need to talk to you for a second. And you explain to them again. Another month, you go again, you remind them in different ways and different words so they don't get tired of the same message, but the same core meaning is there. And you do this over time. You weave and web a strong rope within them that helps them keep that rope to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You have to do this. And so if you have to take less days at work as a mom, it has to be done. You have to protect and preserve your kids. Because if you think that the television is going to be the guardian, you think that the schools are going to stay moral. The cat's out of the bag. The war is upon our feet. It's already here. It's only a matter of time before it gets to you. And if it doesn't get to you, it's because people here held the line. Okay? They're not joking when they say they're coming for your kids. And when you have all these ex-Muslims and liberal Christians teaming up with ex-Muslims to destroy Islamic values of morality, chastity, sobriety, and getting a lot of views, we have to be wise in our approach. And we need more parents preparing their kids for when they get around these people. This is why when a feminist hijabi, is pushing your daughter to go to university, if you're going to listen to those feminists, you better prepare your kids now, because those universities, as we're seeing more and more every day, having classes of highly inappropriate nature. And even if your kid don't take that class, they're going to be around people who did, who can groom them, who can caress their mind to just open up to these depravities. Okay? We have to be proactive about it, and also responsive, and create good places for kids to learn, but also strengthen our sons with brutal honesty, and to make them have discernment and discrimination against these types of loose women, and our daughters not to choose men like Andrew Tate, not to choose pimps or players or hustlers or thugs, but to choose dignified, righteous, pious men. This is what we must do. And that starts from 7 to 18, and obviously with their whole life. But to mention marriage, to mention being a mother, okay? Because the schools are doing the opposite. They are. They don't talk about motherhood. They don't talk about none of that. It's about, what do you want to be when you grow up? They're pushing them towards careerism. They push abortions. They make films about abortions that's glorious. They have this death cult. And if you want to fight the death cult, you have to choose life. And every topic around life. And how you have a good life. And then you bring in Allah. You bring in the examples. Okay? Whether you use examples of Khalid bin al-Walid and his bravery, or Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her, the mother of believers, and her studying a lot. However angle you take, from the Sharia, from the Sirah, however way in which you do it, from a certain scholar's perspective, you name it, it still has to be done. And you have to have the time and the diligence and the planning to do it. And so, if we're to save our children from the secular liberal atheists and the occultists, we have to start talking to them one-on-one. If you put it off and put it off, at 12 years old, You'd be surprised what your child has seen behind your back. We can protect them for as long as we can, but our home must also be a center of learning. And we have to have the energy to do it. We have to have the mental fortitude to do it. So we have to cut out things that we can and sacrifice so that our daughters and our sons can grow up to be strong, formidable people who are righteous and steadfast. And if that means less money, so you can't go on 4 vacations, or you can't have certain things, and you have to be a minimalist for some time, so be it. Because our reward is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Our reward is waiting for us in the hereafter. The dunya is temporary. We never know when we're going to die. So if you keep putting it off and you don't start talking to your kids about this, you may pass away before you finish the job. And the job is never finished, but if you never start, subhanAllah, you died, what happened? Who's going to do it? If your kid ends up in foster care, it's a pretty brutal system. So we have to guard our kids, and us American reverts especially. We have to look at our lives and say, how did we get so astray? And what was it about Islam that guided us and helped us to improve? Okay, we have to teach our children this. Okay? So again, speak to your children about the debasement of the OnlyFans chicks, the Cardi B chicks. Teach them to dislike those types of people as much as you would dislike a pile of dog vomit on your carpet. And to have respect, love, and endearment towards not showing your flesh. And this is a very powerful way, inshallah, we can combat their messaging. Because they're doing it on all levels, through the music, through advertising, you name it. So we ourselves must rise to the occasion, press forward, and continue to edge against them as much as they press upon us. So let me know what you think.